Yep.
All right, welcome to the July 10th, 2024 meeting of the Municipal Building Commission. For the record, everyone is here except for Peter. Gives us a quorum. We have a guest, Courtney Allen. We have our staff person, Mason Lord. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of June 5th?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. In Mason, we just have one bill to pay.
Actually, two. So there's the one listed for KBA,
Yep.
which is the public safety feasibility. This is the final payment. As everyone on the commission saw, the final report came in that was sent out to the members of the commission today. So this is the final payment to close out that contract. And then also Waterline Industries, which Courtney is going to speak about tonight as well, the Pawtucket Interconnect. That came in yesterday. So trying to close out, we're in the payables period for the end of the fiscal year, so trying to move the invoices as quick as possible.
And so how much is that one for?
That one is for $100,192.21. That brings the total completed on that contract up to just over 1.5 million of the just under $3 million contract.
Okay, and you've approved it?
We have.
And Courtney, you've approved it?
Yes.
Is there a motion to pay the bills?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. Courtney, you're up.
Okay. Good evening. Well, the photo is up for temporary treatment, so I will start with that.
Okay.
As you can see from the pictures, the metal building is up. The interior and exterior panels are all installed. By the end of this week, we should have a finished roof, finished doors, and all the trim work on the building. Other things for this month, last month, electrical work began inside the building. So when I go through the pictures, you'll see some mounted panels, some conduit for lighting, and some wiring started. Delivered this month, the pump skids came in. The pre-filters and the control panels for the pre-filters are on site. The pre-filters, again, they're not going to be something that exists in the permanent plant, but they're going to exist for just organics and things that make it through the filter beds, so it'll help our PFAS vessels last a little longer once they're up and operational. So July, building should be complete. All the HVAC equipment for the building will be delivered and installed by the end of the month, and the VFD will be on site. What we're looking at for August to October is completion of all the electrical and the restoration of the site and paving. November and December, PFAS equipment and media delivery will take place and it will be installed. We're estimating startup for January, and I know the last time I was here, the estimate was going to be around Halloween. The lead time for the PFAS vessels, unfortunately, has changed. We've seen this a lot. The consultant is going to reach out to the manufacturer for the vessels and for the media. First of all, double check the reasoning and try to nudge them along and get us further ahead in line of other people that might be getting these supplied. Best guess is what we're seeing for the reasoning for this is, again, it's a supply chain issue. I talked last time I was here about the new EPA regs coming into place for PFAS. So we have, another 36 states that are now regulated that weren't at the beginning of the year. And we also have the sampling, EPA sampling has been taking place for larger systems. Actually, we're sampling now for PFAS 29. Your larger systems, like when you get into your Boston and New York and Springfield and Cincinnati and like those big cities, are all sampling now. And they tend to have better funding to buy things right away than we do. So that's best guess on the wait time for the vessels. But everything else is on track and everything will be ready when they do show up. So what you're looking at here, this is for those of you that have been to Wading River when you first pull in the gate. That's our pump building right to the right. There it is. right to the right. What you're seeing back here is the actual completed building, so this would be on site. When you pull in, it would be right to your left, kind of buried in the front corner of the site. This is a closer view. So you notice the walls are up and everything, and we're waiting on a roof. Different view, this is the street view, so if you drive by the plant, this is what you would actually see. I think we picked a pretty good color. It actually looks exactly like a smaller version of the JB building that we have on West Street, which isn't super visible from the road, and that was the intent here too. And this is your inside. So I mean, they've done a pretty good stretch this month. So that's the temporary treatment. I can move on to Pawtucket if you want me to keep going.
Anybody have any questions?
Are there any anticipated additional expenses due to the delay in the vessels being delivered?
There are not at this time.
Courtney, where exactly is that building?
If you go up Balcom Street,
Which street?
Balcom in Mansfield, the Wading River plant.
Worcester.
Yeah, it's kind of over near the fish hatchery in North Attleboro, the other plant. It's kind of buried back there. This building right now is on the same site as the existing plant. We kind of buried it in the front corner. And I'll make the offer. It's a little bit rough to get up there right now with all the construction going on, but anybody that wants to see it is certainly welcome to come and visit. And we can do it during the week, or I have Saturday mornings open if anybody's interested. And actually, Saturday could possibly be better because we wouldn't be in anybody's way.
Okay, any other questions? Then Attleboro, Pawtucket.
Okay, Attleboro, Pawtucket. The foundation and the pipe penetration work is completed. They're still moving along on site grading and electrical work. July, excuse me, they'll be continuing installation of the electrical duct bank and the pad for the electrical cabinet for the site, connection of the cabinet to utility power, and they're going to begin installation of the infiltration basin. The August MBC meeting will include a change order number 2. We're not sure 100% what that looks like yet, but I do have estimates. One of them is additional work required by Pawtucket for disinfection of their side of the water main. What's been described to me so far is the procedure is a little bit over the top, but I haven't seen what it looks like yet and what they're going to be requesting funding for. The estimate is $22,000. The other thing that we'll see on the change order is a credit for the permitting of the gas main, and I think I mentioned that a few months ago, that the gas main work is coming in roughly about $80,000 cheaper than expected. So overall, we'll see a change order, but overall, it'll be a decent-sized credit. Delivery of the station is delayed just a couple weeks. We expect it at the end of this month. It's going to be arriving in early August, with expected startup in September. This was due to electrical coordination issues at the manufacturing. And again, it's just a couple weeks, and we're still well ahead of the contract completion date is expected January 25, so we're still a few months ahead there. So Pawtucket, after all these years, is finally still going well. So this is the Pawtucket site. This is if you're standing on the newly opened River Street. And this is, there's not much to see in this picture. It just kind of gives you some sort of idea of location. If you were standing where this picture was taken, Comtran cable is across Turner Street to your right. Excuse me. There's the foundation. You can see our hydrant, our yard valves, pipe penetration from our side and from the Pawtucket side are both completed, obviously not connected. We don't have a building yet. And here's another view of the same thing. And this is actually looking, if you were standing kind of with Comtran towards your back on Turner Street, and looking kind of towards the highway and towards the old Crown Yarn site. I think I have one more. I do have one more, and this is your other angle. So this is looking just from the other end with Comtran over on your right. And same thing, you'll see the pipe penetration for Pawtucket, and ours is kind of buried in the back over here.
You're satisfied with the quality of the work so far?
I am.
And with the previous project as well?
Yeah, actually, both contractors we've worked with before, Bizco, who is on site at Wading River, has been on site at Wading River before. They actually did Blake's Dam 5 or 6 years ago. And the work there was good, and we're seeing the same thing now. Waterline, believe it or not, did a really unrelated project for us. They did our HVAC at the West Street plant, and again, that was probably 4 or 5 years ago. So we were happy to see that these were the low bidders, and we're still happy with them.
Good. Any questions?
Can you just clarify, so on the change order, I think part of it was potentially going to come before us this month, but our engineers of record didn't necessarily agree with some of the pieces from the contractor. So like that's part of the change order process, is they have to actually say, okay, this is additional work. So that's still kind of to be determined right now.
Right. I mean, the gas credit is the gas credit. For the disinfection process that Pawtucket was requiring, I haven't seen what was required yet either, and how available it was to the contractor before they bid. So that we're really going to have to take a good look at.
So just for clarity, we don't, if someone requests a change order, an increase or something, we don't just give them out, right? So the engineer specifically is reviewing and is going to make a determination, recommendation on whether or not they agree with what the contractor's saying.
Whether it was included in the original scope.
Right.
Right. Like how over the top was this disinfection process really? Because every
Because they own
community is different.
some sort of a disinfection process, right?
Right, and they'll have to do one on our end too.
Okay. Anything else?
I do have just a quick update on the permanent plant. Design is still underway. We're still on track. Our deadline for the SRF funding application to Mass DEP is October, I believe it's October 15th, that we have to get 95% plans and specs up to DEP. We're on track for that. In June, we worked with Tater and Howard on the site layout of the actual working areas and of the plant layout. So all that was approved, so they're still moving along.
Good. Mason, we had discussed in the past bringing on a owner's project manager. Do you want to give us an update on that?
Yeah, so we, Courtney, myself, and Tater and I have been working through a scope for the OPM, so we're pretty much finalized on that. We're actually not going to bring on an OPM until the construction phase, so over the next few months, we'll actually, probably in the next 2 months, we'll get it out on the street and then go through OPM selection. But the actual scope of work is a little bit more limited than our traditional projects, just because they're coming on later in the process. So they're going to be mostly the on-site oversight, construction administration, contract administration throughout the course of the construction phase of the project.
So when would we expect them to begin services?
I believe January potentially.
The bid is expected for the facility in January, so they would be on board
So we
by
would have
then.
them on at that point.
Right, so if we started in September, we might have somebody in place by November or early December.
Correct.
To start a month later, give them time to get their contract in place. So it sounds like something we need to put on the street in September-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Then, thank you.
Thank
A very
you.
thorough report and mostly good news.
I know, it's unusual, right? Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, Mason, library.
Yes, so as of this week, the city is contracted with Port Construction Consulting, as folks know, the principal being Mark Sawatsky, for clerk of the work services for the library carpeting and floor replacement project. So that contract is in place as of this week. And actually, Mark, as everyone knows, is a pretty eager guy. So we sent him the contract yesterday, and he was on site today. So he's on site, doing some initial investigations, taking some photos, better understanding the scale of the project, and he's already working on the RFQ. So we'll be looking to move to designer selection and potentially this month, with we as potentially as early as the end of July actually getting an RFQ on the street, and then giving the MBC an opportunity to review the RFQ and comment at the August meeting, and issue any addendums if there's any concerns, comments that we want to modify. But we're trying to get that moving as quick as possible, and then the MBC will obviously be part of the evaluation committee for our designer, as is usually the case.
So it would be shortlisting in maybe September?
I would say, yeah, so that's probably correct. We'd like to have I think we'd like to have a designer on site in October, so September, and then trying to get a contract in place then as well.
So we would have to then maybe have a second meeting because we need to shortlist and then interview?
Potentially.
But we won't be having school meetings anymore. So you're all free.
Or
What's
if
the estimated cost of that project?
So the estimated cost. So when we had put a funding request together to the council, with sort of a high end cost at around $750,000, a lot of that is dependent on if there's any sort of hazardous materials mitigation. That kind of drives a lot of the cost. Mark had pointed out some really good things, potentially to save for cost savings on the project with the way we can use different materials, but there is a lot that's dependent on when the designer gets on site and we start doing some of that testing. Mark isn't anticipating anything at this point, but we have to be cognizant of that, because that'll significantly modify the scope of like a moving company. If we have to have a moving company come in and actually remove all of the stacks, all of the furniture, do it in phases, store it off site, that makes the project a lot bigger in scale. Any place where we can, carpet tile around furniture, or, potentially, have some other alternative rather than lifting, replacing and returning, that saves a lot on that contract. We're also going to be trying to, bring in, library staff and volunteers for the actual categorization of the books and, the remove and replace. We're trying to kind of minimize the financial impact of the project, but, we had looked at, when we had looked at the cost of carpeting, an actual carpeting contract being around, potentially $250,000 for the actual carpet, for about 25,000 square feet, and then a moving company actually being around the same amount, just for to be able to do that. A lot remains to be seen on how many phases it would be. Is it each floor a phase? Mark's done multiple of these library kind of move and replace projects, so he's got a lot of really good ideas. And he's had some initial discussions already with our library director. But a lot of that, it's really early, so over the next few weeks, I think we'll clarify some of that, and then when we have a designer on site, we'll be able to kind of tease out options. I think Mark had also kind of preliminarily today made recommendations of some of the smaller rooms that maybe just have throw rugs or don't necessarily need full floor replacements. Maybe those are alternates. So when we get to a point where we're really considering this cost and scale, there might be add alternates involved. So sort of some of the main public facing places are the priority, and then there's some other areas that maybe aren't as high priority. So it's gonna be a lot, but
Right.
up to the task.
I mean, that project was finished in '93, fall of '93. So I wouldn't expect that we would find asbestos glue or anything.
Yeah, Mark is more concerned about VOCs, actually. So just some of the other materials and the adhesives. Yeah.
The adhesives, we replaced one bad adhesive type with another. Is that what he's saying?
Well, some of the building codes and regulations have changed. So at the time, I think most asbestos kind of shifted out of adhesives around 88, 89. So we were kind of in that window where we probably aren't dealing with asbestos, but there's plenty of VOCs and stuff in various, that's where his concern would be. Again, at this point, we're not expecting anything, but that's what we have to kind of plan for.
So if there was, would this be like when we replaced the gym floors at Hyman Fine and Hill Roberts with the guys in the Ghostbuster suits scraping the stuff up from the floor?
I don't know what that would look like. Again, at this point, I don't think we know, what the status of it is. A lot of it would be, again, it's below carpet, so it's not like an immediate concern. But once you open these things up, you have to mitigate them if you find them. So.
Yeah, the other thing I remember we had to do over there with those gym floors was they had these huge fans, and then they had these tubes connected to vent everything outside. So,
Right, that's another factor when you're actually in there on site is, how do you mitigate air, even when you're actually putting down new stuff where there's not issues in the materials, it's how do you mitigate the impact to the other floors that are still operating, the staff, the public, you have like negative air pressure trying to push out the window, like there's a lot, there's definitely a lot to that. So, I think Mark has a really good handle on that. So I'm glad that we, are bringing in someone to sort of manage this project kind of soup to nuts. Because I think he really has a good idea of what the project entails, but he's also cognizant of the financial, the financial burden to the city and trying to minimize the impact. So.
And so the library will not be shut down. We will.
No. So that was one of the things Mark was very clear about today was, you would do this project completely differently. The whole point of this is so that yes, there will be disruptions to operations, but the library is unless something significant came up with materials, the library is not going to shut down. There might be, sections that are not accessible for certain times, but the whole reason behind, lift and replace and doing it in phases is so that you can continue operations and minimize the impact as best as possible.
Why wasn't this done when they did all the work to that a couple of years ago?
It's a great question. I think so when I came on last year, we were still kind of wrapping out the library project.
That project was
roof,
was roof and building envelope and windows,
Yeah.
and the HVAC system. It wasn't any of the interior.
Yeah, they did some painting and stuff.
Because they had to patch stuff, if I remember right. They didn't make like 1,000 holes in the walls for the wiring that they put in for the computers.
The servers. I know. I mean, there is a specific space with the servers right now. Having not been on site during that project, I couldn't speak to the real specifics of it, but I know there was definitely some. I would say maybe some shortcomings in the way that project was overseen by the OPM we had at the time, and maybe there were some things that might have been missed, and and it also could have been a financial decision at the time.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
And now we're going to be up to around $10 million for a building that's worth less than $2 million.
So it's it's definitely gonna be an expensive project, and that's the other consideration too. Is when you're bringing a company out to potentially move furniture around and shift things around, that's also the time to consider. There might be some areas in there where carpet doesn't make sense. We already kind of identified some where it's even the office space, the front desk there's carpet in one section of it and there's tile in the other, and they're about the same cost to do either or, but it probably doesn't make sense to have any carpet in that space. So going back in and actually instead swapping that out for the tile to kind of be consistent and have the tile there. That's where a lot of carts move around. So those are the kind of things I think we'll work through with the designer, but using the opportunity to make sure it's done right, rather than just saying, okay, let's just replace the carpet exactly how it was. There's probably some spaces where we can do things a little bit better, and also the maintenance costs will be lower. So.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. So the next meeting of this.
There's one from the crowd.
Oh.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Does the city have an electronic copy of the public safety feasibility study yet?
We do.
Will you be posting it on the website?
Yeah, we can absolutely put it on the website.
Do you know when that might occur?
I could probably do it in the next week. We just sent it out to the commission members today. We could probably put it online.
How many pages is the hard copy?
I printed it. It was
It's
It
pretty
was a
long.
ream of paper thick. It was a lot of pages. It was so big that the biggest clip we had wouldn't fit around it. I had to put it in 2 clips.
I don't remember the exact page count, but it's definitely, it's well over 100. It's probably closer to 200.
And the code,
Yeah, I think it's much more extensive than the library feasibility
Right.
study.
and the total cost of that feasibility study was what?
I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't either.
Actually-
It was somewhere between 1 and 200, was it?
It was 175,000.
And who paid for that?
Who paid for that? That was actually, I mean, it was paid for by the city, but with the feasibility study, this was back in 2020.
Yeah, that was
It's through.
That was an appropriation by the council, asked for by the mayor at the time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, there are no other questions. Our next meeting of this group is August 7th, here at 5:30. And just a reminder, the last regularly scheduled school building committee meeting will be next Wednesday at 5:30 over at the high school. And after that, there will only be meetings as needed if anything comes up. But I can tell you that at the OAC meeting this morning, they are really very close to having everything wrapped up. Things have gone well. Just a few punch list items that are still getting taken care of, but other than that, things are in good shape. So, with that being said, motion to adjourn at 5:56.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.